Hey guys, in this video we are going to add authentication to our project. So we are going to add the authentication in our project in Firebase. We are going to add the method email and password authentication. Enable it and save. Now let's go to the configuration of our Firebase. Here we are going to export the auth. Let's import it. And now we are going to create a context. Let's call it auth context. We will create a new context. And we are going to create a hook. This custom hook will make it easier for us to import it in other files without importing also auth context. Now we will add the provider and pass it the value. This provider will provide other components that it's going to wrap them with everything that we are going to pass inside this value object. Now we are going to create a state for the current user and pass this to other components using this provider. We are going to build this form. This is a modal. So we are going to use this modal in almost everything in our project. So we need to pass it also in the context. This state will control the model if it is open and what is its title and what is its content. Its content will be other components. We will pass it to this state. Let's now work on the authentication functions. Let's start by sign up or register. It will receive the email and password. This function will retain a promise that is created by this function create user with email and password. The auth is the one we exported from the config file, and email and password will receive them from the user. Let's work now on login. It's also retaining a promise. And this is to log the user out. Also, we are going to pass the auth. Now we are going to use effect to create a listener to any change on the user state. This will set a listener or watcher on the user state. If there is any change, it will pass the new state of the user to this function, and we can set our current user with this information of the user. Let's log it so we can watch or see that the state is changed. This is just for testing. Now let's clear this listener so we are not going to set many listeners on the same object. Now let's pass all of these states and functions in the value object so other components can see them. In the app, let's wrap all of these components with this provider. Let's now create the model. This model will be flexible, so we are going to use it by all the forms. For example, changing the profile or changing the password or changing the email, or also the login and the register. the is open in the model object will control this dialog or this model if it is open or it is closed. When it is false, it is closed. When it is true, it is open. We will use set model to close it in the handle close function. So we will just set the other properties to stay the same, and is open we will make it a false to be closed. This will contain the title, and the title is passed by a model object. We will change it depending on the form, which model or form we are using. And this is the icon button on the right side that we can close also the model manually. When we click on it, it will trigger the same function. Let's make some styling. So we can position it in the right top corner. And here we will pass the content of the model depending on the form. Let's now create the login component. We will place it inside a user folder. This login form will be the content of the model. And the content of the model is automatic, it is flexible, it is not fixed. Dividers is placing lines between the different content of the dialog. This is the text shown in top of this dialog box. And because we are going to use the email, the password, and the submit button in many forms, we are going to create them as a components, and we will import them when we need them. Let's create 3 files. Let's call them email field, password field, and submit button. Let's start by building email field. It is a text field from Material UI. Let's add it is a props. This input ref is a prop that will be passed from the component that is going to use this field. We are going also to pass this default value as a prop, and it is default value is an empty text. Let's copy this and use it in the password field because it is almost the same. Let's change the name. And let's change the props. Here we need more props. We don't need the default value. We need to pass the ID, and its default value is password if we don't pass it, and the label also the default value is a password. Let's change them here. This is the ID we received, and this is the label. Here we are going to use a toggle to show or hide the value of the password. So we are going to use a state. We will call it show password. And set the default value to be false, so the password is hidden. Here depends on this value of the show password. We'll make it even a text shown if it is true, or password hidden if it is false. And this is the default. Let's change the reference. This is to enforce the user to enter 6 characters for the password. And this is to add the icon to toggle the password if it is shown or not. We will position it at the end of the field. And depends on the state of the show password, we will show different icons. Even visibility off or visibility is on. Let's add props to this icon button. This is the title shown when we hover over it. And we are going to create 2 functions, one for the click and one for the mouse down. This function for the mouse down is only to prevent the default action, and that is not to move the focus out of our field to this icon. In the handle click function, we will just toggle the state of show password. And in the mouse down, we will just prevent moving out the focus from our field. Let's now build the submit button. This variant is contained. The icon will be send, and it is positioned at the end. And it is type is submit, so when we click, it submits our form. Just go back to the login and use these components. Here we are going to import the email field, and we will pass it the reference that we are going to create now. Just copy this and create references for the password and the confirm password. Let's pass the email ref as a prop here. This is the same as when we say email ref equals email ref. It's the same, but it is shorter. And because we are not going to use any default value for this email field, we are not going to pass any default value. And it is automatically will be using the empty text. The password field, we will also just pass the password reference. The others will take the default values. Because we are going to use the same form for the login and register, we need a state to toggle between them, and we will call it isRegister. And the default value is false, so the default one is the login. The confirm password, we will show it only if it is a register, not login. So we will add this condition, and we will pass the props. The password ref will be the value of confirm password ref. The ID will be confirm password. And the label will be confirm password also. Let's work now on dialog actions that contains the buttons. Let's style it. And this is the padding on the right and on the left. These are the actions. It will be 3 dialog actions. Let's add first the button of forget password. And now let's use our submit button. This button will submit the form. Now let's move outside the form. This dialog actions will contain the toggle between register and login. Depending on its register state, we will show a different messages. So if it is registered, we will ask the user if he has already an account. He can just toggle it to the login and sign in. And if it is in the login and doesn't have account, he can toggle it back to the register and create an account. The same case in the buttons. We will change the text of the button depending on the state of the is register. And on a click, we will toggle the state. We will set it to the opposite of the previous state. Let's now add the area of login with Google. Let's add some styling to make it in the center. And vertical padding. Here it is not contained but outlined. And we will add the icon of Google. Let's add the modal in the app. And now we are going to change the content of the modal to be the login. So let's go to the nav and find our button, the login button. And this is our old simulation for the current user values. Let's delete them, we don't need them anymore. And let's import our current user, the real value in our context. Now let's create a function when we click on the login button. Let's call it open login. Let's build it. We need here to set the content of the model, so we need to import here the set model. This will open the model and we make it true. The title will be login and the content will be the component of the login. This is the content of the model. Let's now test it. Let's press on login. It's working. Let's toggle between register and login. Also working, but we have a little problem. The title is not changing. So let's go back to our login component and create use effect to toggle between these titles. This use effect will depend on its register state. We will check its value. If it is true, we will make the title to be register. And when it is false, we will make it login. Let's import the modal and set modal to change the title. All other properties of the model stay the same. We are going just to change the title. And let's check now. Let's toggle it. Perfect. Let's work now on submitting the form. Let's create a function. We don't want submit to refresh our page, so we will prevent the default behavior. This is the first thing. And we will get the values of the email, the password, and in case of register also the confirmed password. Let's now test if it is register or login. We'll do different functionality in this case. In case of register, we'll check first that the value of password is the same as the value of confirmed password. If that value doesn't match, we'll throw an error, and this error will be catched by our catch error. Otherwise, we will try to sign up this user using his email and password. Let's import the sign up function that we pass it in the context value. If everything is successful and the account is created, we will close our model. And in case of error, we will use for now the default alert, and in a couple of minutes we will build our alert system. Now we are going to work on the functionality of login. In case of error, we'll do the same. Let's import this function from our context and pass it the email and password of the user. And in case of success promise, we will close our modal. Let's check now. Let's try to register with a new email and password. This is also working, the toggling between password and text. Perfect, it is working. And the listener in the context will get all the information of the user in the current user state. Let's go and work on the logout in the navbar so we can test the login. Let's create this function. It is a sync function because we are going to use a wait. Let's import the logout function from the context. Try and catch. And let's use this function. In case of error, we will do the same. Let's check. We are out. Let's try the login with the same email and same password. We are in again. Our authentication is working. Now let's work on login with Google. Let's go back to our Firebase account and add sign-in method. Let's add provider, Google provider. Enable it and select our email. Let's go back to our auth context and create a function to sign in with Google. let's call it login with Google. This function will receive no parameters because it is just will open a pop-up window. Let's create a provider from the class of Google. And retain the promise retained by this function. We'll use our auth and the provider we just created. Let's add this to the value of object. And let's use it in the login. In our Google button, let's handle the click by creating new function. Let's call it handle Google login and create this function. It's again a sync function because it is going to wait for a promise. In case of error, we'll copy the same code. And we will wait for the promise to be resolved from this function. Let's import that function from our context. And also, in case of success, we will close our modal. Let's check now. And it is working. Let's choose our account. We are in with our even avatar. This avatar is not shown up and we will fix it. Let's go to the nav and search for the avatar. This is the avatar. Let's add a source. It will be, let's check if our current user is here from the context or the old one. Yeah, it is here. And we will get the property photo URL. Let's check. It is here. Let's go back to our context. And now let's work on our alert system. We will create a state for that. This property is alert will be responsible for opening and closing this alert. Severity, if it is success, if it is error, if it is info, if it is warning. And the message we are going to show to the user. Timeout, if we passed a timeout here, it will disappear after the seconds has finished. And the location where we are going to place this alert, if it is in the main page or in the modal. Let's add also the loading, so we will make our project prettier and more professional. And let's pass them in the value object. Now let's create these components in the components folder. The alert, we will call it notify because alert is already used by Material UI. We don't want to mix it with that component. And the loading, we'll call it loading. Let's start with the alert. Let's add the margin button. And we will add reference. This reference, we are going to use it to scroll to this notification when there is error or some message we want to show to the user. Collapse will close it or open it depending on the value of is alert. Let's import all of these properties from alert in our context. Let's extract all the properties here. And also set alert to close it when there is timeout. Is alert here. This is the alert from Material UI. And inside it, our message. Let's add the props of this component. severity is our severity in the context. And this is for the closing button. Let's make the close icon small. This is label when we hover over it. And on a click, we will close the alert. We will set the alert to be the old alert, and we will just change is alert to be false. And this will close our alert. Let's now work on scrolling to this alert if the user in another place in the page, and also when there's timeout to close it automatically when this time is finished. Let's use the reference to scroll to this alert. And pass this object to scroll smoothly. Now let's work on the timer. When there's timeout, let's check if the timeout is not null. We'll create a timeout. And when this timeout is finished, we will set the alert to be false. This will close our alert. Let's now clear this timeout. Let's now add a component to show this alert in the main page. We'll call it main notification. And we will import the location property in the alert object from the context to check if the location is the main. Only if the location equals main, we will show the notify or the alert on the main page. Let's add it in the app component before the nav. We need to add another alert in our model. Let's put it before the content. Only if the location is modal, we will show this notify or alert. Let's set this alert in our login when there is an error, so we will check it. Instead of this default alert, we will set our alert to show this message. Let's first import it from the context. Set alert. Is alert to be true, so it will be open. Severity is error. Message is the message of the error. Timeout, let's make it stay for 5 seconds. And the location will be the model. Let's delete the old alert. Let's check that when the passwords don't match. Let's try to register with a new account. Let's add 2 different passwords and submit, and it is here. Let's wait a little to check if it will disappear. It has disappeared after 5 seconds. But we have problem here. If we closed before these 5 seconds finished, the other time we will open the model, it will stay in there, in that model. So let's use effect to close it when the model is closed. This use effect will depend on the modal property is open. We will check if it is false. That means we closed the modal. And we will check also the alert that it is still there, not closed. Still there is alert to be a true. But first let's import this alert here to use it. If it is true, and also the location is the modal. In this case, when the modal is closed, we will close also the alert. Set the alert to be all the properties and is alert to false. Let's check now. Let's close it before 5 seconds and let's open it again. It's not there anymore. It's working. Let's now search for all our old alert and replace it with our new alert. Let's replace them one by one. This error will trigger if there is a problem with the logout. This is in the main page. So we will set the location of the alert to be the main page. Let's set all the properties. This alert to be true. Severity is error. Message is the same message of error. Timeout, let's make it here 8 seconds. And the location is main. Let's copy it and let's delete the old one. Let's go to this in the options. This error will be triggered if there is a problem with deleting the document or the file. So it will be shown in the main page. Let's first change the old current user to be the one from the context. And import our set alert from auth context. Let's paste the same. This is in the progress item. This will be triggered if there is a problem when we add a record of the image. Let's first replace this current user we simulated before to be the real one in our context. And let's import also the set alert. let's paste it here. And also let's change these properties of the user to be the new one. Let's copy it and paste it for the email and the name and the photo. This is the object will be added to the document of every image. Should be now from our current user we received from Firebase Authentication. Let's also replace this. Let's import set alert from the context. And set the state of alert to show this error. It's also in the main page because this hook is responsible for showing the images list in the main page. Now let's replace these in our login component. All of these alerts should be in the modal. Now let's go and build our loading component. This backdrop from Material UI, and we are going to use the circular progress, infinite circular progress. We will change the color to be white. And we will use our loading state in our context to control opening and closing this backdrop or this loading. Let's change the z index to be in top of everything. So we will use the default in the theme, and we will adding to that default value some value. Let's make it 999 to be sure that it is on top of everything. Now let's add it in the app. On top of modal component. Now let's use it in our login. When we submit the form, we will show that loading. So let's import the set loading from the context to set this loading to true state, so it will be shown. And when we finished, we will make it disappeared by setting the value of the state to be false. Let's check it. Let's try to log in and see if it will appear. And it is here. Let's try to add an image. Here it shows the whole email. It is better to just show the first part of the email before the @ So let's go to our image list and split the email by @ and get the first part of the array. And it is now better. In our next video, we are going to work on the profile of the user, how to change the name and the avatar of the user. And how to reflect it on his or her all images. And also we are going to work on the settings, how to change the password, the email, and to delete the account. Also we are going to work on verifying the email, and when the user forgot his or her password, how to reset that password. And also we are going to apply the security rules on Firebase database and storage as well.